Okay, so this is Eric Prince, a former U.S. Navy SEAL officer, now an American businessman, has a special message he wants to share to fellow Africans, specifically African leaders. In a recent interview, he said,
It's time for us to just put the imperial hat back on to say, we're going to govern those countries if you're incapable of governing yourselves, because enough is enough. We're done being invaded.
Because our own national security risk is at stake.
Exactly.
National security interests are at stake.
You can say that about pretty much all of Africa. They're incapable of governing themselves and benefiting their citizens because the governments there are all about looting and pillaging and lining their pockets and going shopping in Paris instead of actually
All right, hold on a
making their
second.
country
Hold
a
on.
better
People on the left are going to watch this. They're going to say, wait a minute, Eric Prince is talking about being a colonialist again.
Now, there's probably more context to what he said, but at this point, does it really matter? I mean, by now, I would usually go in about how important it is for us Africans, wherever we are, to work together to improve the continent. But at this point, I'm going to let what he said marinate just a bit, because though he said it out in the open so confidently, there's so many others that are working secretly to achieve this. And you know, the saddest thing is, so many leaders are letting this happen, and in some cases are cool with it because they're happy with that small, cheap deal that they make in private, enough for them to take them to trips to Paris and sometimes buy properties everywhere else but their home because they don't want to wake you up. Now, Eric Prince is a controversial guy, but he's just saying out loud what everybody is thinking. Africa has so much potential, and it is so sad our leaders are not doing everything they can to work together to put the continent first, because if they actually did, everybody would be well off.
Guys, look at this. While we're focused on tribal wars and diaspora wars, the world is eyeing Africa. Behind me is General Anderson. He's nominated to replace General Langley, and during a Senate meeting, he was talking about the value of Africa. He said China and Russia, they're heavily involved in Africa, and the future of the U.S. economy depends on U.S. involvement in Africa. Listen.
Why do we need to have presence in Africa? What is your thoughts?
So, Africa is the key to any strategy. It's on strategic terrain because the waterways that it forms between the Straits of Gibraltar all the way down through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. It is critical minerals and resources that are on the continent that we need for the future economy. Both China and Russia see their strategies going through the continent, and they are going to engage there. And so we can cede that ground or we can compete in that ground. And I think we have a very powerful tool to compete with. As Admiral Bradley mentioned, nobody brings more credibility to the counterterrorism fight than the U.S.
He said it himself. The routes in Africa, they are very strategic, and the critical minerals are important for the future economy. Russia and China, they've already been involved in Africa, and the US, they want to be involved as well. Instead of focusing on tribal wars and diaspora wars, we should focus on Africa. Everyone else, they know that it's the future, and we should be on board as well. But what do you guys think? Comment below.
They tell you that Africa is underdeveloped. Africa has nothing to offer. Africa, don't go there. It's not a place for you. But guess what they do? They are plundering Africa. They are taking the resources of Africa. They are using all that Africa has got to develop their countries. I'm talking about Europe and America. Our uranium, our gold, oil, diamond, just name it. All of these things are in Africa. And they'll tell you that Africa is no good place. Don't go there. They are poor. They are backward. Yet, we finance the growth of the whole world. They tell you that don't go there, it's dangerous. But everything that they need to grow their country is being plundered from Africa. Yet, the narrative is that they are poor. They are no good people. I've come to debunk this narrative that there's an agenda that has started long hundreds of years back, centuries back, and is still being done to today. They make the world see that Africa is not developed, is poor. But the wealth in Africa, they use to develop their country. That's what they do. Welcome to my channel. Let me take you through on a journey of videos that I wanted to watch as how they've planned orchestrated to make Africa remain poor while they use the mineral resources, the blessings that Africa has got to develop their country. That is what they do. Come along with me. Let's go together. Credit belongs to the original creator of every stitches and video I'll be showing this platform. And of course, if you love this great content, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and share. I'll be right back. Don't go nowhere.
I mean, if you get mugged on the street and the thief takes all your money, but he gives you back $1, do you feel like he just gave you charity? Do you thank him for that? Are you in his debt now because he was so kind as to give you a tiny fraction of your own money back to you? I mean, seriously, call this so-called aid, call it what it really is. It's a robbery rebate. It's an insult. It's an insult. This is what they won't teach you in so-called development studies. Total American so-called aid to Africa, the whole continent, is roughly around $12 billion per year, between 10 and 12. If that sounds like a lot to you, let me put it in some kind of perspective, a little bit of perspective. The big 7 AI tech companies just spent $100 billion in the first quarter of 2025 just on data centers. That's $1 billion per day spent by just 7 companies in America, NVIDIA, OpenAI, and so on. The entire continent of Africa gets $12 billion, 12, of so-called aid from America. Do you understand? That's like 1/6 of 1% of the U.S. budget. That's like 0.17% of the U.S. budget. That's not even a crumb. It's a crumb of a crumb. And the truth is, even that measly 12 billion, most of that, you don't even actually get that yourselves in Africa. Most of that goes right back to them. So what are you even talking about? U.S. aid, American aid. The United States pretends to give $10 to $12 billion a year across the whole African continent. Health programs through, what's it called, PEPFAR, some measure of food relief, military training, and so on. A few USAID NGOs, et cetera, et cetera. But every dollar is subject to procurement regulations. They force African countries to buy American goods. It's tied to privatization clauses written by the IMF. And it's tied to basically a geopolitical loyalty oath to adhere to America's priorities in Africa. Every penny is either to buy American goods or to sell your assets to America or to sell your politicians to America. Meanwhile, the real money moves in the opposite direction. Oil, minerals, cocoa, coffee, on and on. Exxon, Chevron, Cargill, they strip the raw natural wealth out of Africa. And then they wire the profits back home, and then they hide from taxes offshore. In 2022 alone, U.S. companies imported $37 billion worth of African crude, with almost no local value added. That's between $90 and $120 billion every year that's taken from you just in crude oil and unpaid taxes. And for that $12 billion you're supposed to shut your mouth, look at that. $12 billion coming in, $120 billion going out. They take 10 times as much as they so-called give back.
The U.S. doesn't like all this sovereignty and making its own decisions that Africa is up to. So the United States now has decided to put some pressure on Africa to basically sanction itself against buying any goods or anything else from Russia other than grain and fertilizer. Grain and fertilizer, okay, fine.
Here's the New York Times headline.
Yes. So now the New York Times is reporting that U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, is warning African countries not to purchase anything from Russia besides grain and fertilizer, or else what? Or else what? You know what? Sanctions.
Because we love our sanctions.
Our favorite things, right? So you sanction them, or we're going to sanction you, right? Now, you may recall that just a few weeks ago, we reported that African nations, they had a conference lately. They published a paper and they said, we need to tap into our own resources of fossil fuel for energy because we are too dependent on foreign imports and therefore too vulnerable to outside influences. This is prime example of that kind of thing, right? So the rest of the world said, no, Africa, you're going the wrong way. Don't use fossil fuels. You'll screw up the environment. Like, it's fine for us to have done that, but you don't start, right? Don't go and use your own oil unless we want it, then give it to us, right? But no, we cannot have African nations making sovereign decisions. We need to reserve the right to tell you what to do.
So here's what U.S. Ambassador Thomas Linda Greenfield said when, and we'll go through what she was planning here with this New York Times. In this New York Times piece, it lays it out pretty well. She says, during a visit to Uganda, that countries could buy Russian agricultural products, including fertilizer and wheat. But she added that if a country decides to engage with Russia where there are sanctions, then they are breaking those sanctions. She says, we caution countries not to break those sanctions because then they stand the chance of having actions taken against them. I mean, the audacity.
That's a not so veiled threat.
Like, you bullies, right? She says that purchasing Russian oil risks sanctions. So if you need fuel, you can't buy it from Russia because you run on fuel in Africa. You run on diesel fuel. You need diesel generators. You know, how else are you going to live, right? If you need it, sorry, that's a violation and we will come after you. The United States, already to a, horribly poverty-stricken, famine-stricken part of the world that gets hit the hardest when we put these sanctions in place, is going to bully them. She goes on to say, even though many of U.S. European allies are still buying Russian crude before a ban takes effect by the end of the year, many African nations, including Uganda, have not joined the U.S. in condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Oh, maybe they're independent and they can make their own decisions, like Serbia.
Maybe
right?
they don't want in on your fight.
Maybe like Serbia, which made a natural gas deal, and and now Russia is building a military base in Serbia. They've made their point. They know what they want. They know where their allies are. They remember NATO bombing. They remember their country being destroyed. And many African nations have a long memory of U.S. colonialism, U.S. military intervention. And they rightly blame Western sanctions as well as war for raising food prices and exacerbating shortages in Uganda. Just specifically Uganda, we're using it as an example here. She was asked by reporters to clarify this position. I like this because I pulled up the transcript of her speech. And the question was, are you planning to say what you just told me, the reporter, to the leaders of those countries and those representatives who you are meeting with? And Ambassador Thomas Greenfield says, I'm going to be, she basically says it's going to be a listening tour. She says, I'm going to be listening to them. This for me is a listening tour. It's how, I want to hear how they want to deal with addressing the issues related to food insecurity and finding solutions. So I'm not going about some blame game. What I am about is finding a way forward so that we can address the food insecurity needs that people are feeling every single day. People are starving. People are suffering. How can I and the United States government use our positions to help Africa? How can we address these needs? As you know, Administrator Power was in the region last week discussing food insecurity with African leaders in the Horn of Africa. Secretary Blinken will be on the continent next week, and all of this is a lead up to what we'll be doing during a high-level week in New York in September and the African Leaders Summit in December, and the president will be hosting it. Oh, I can't wait for that in December, to see the president of the United States hosting the Africa Summit so we can tell them more of what they can do with themselves.
Sure. Also,
is Toto going to be there?
Then I would go.
I mean, okay, you're here to listen, but also you have an agenda of what you don't want them to do. Also, like, I don't know, you're traveling on U.S. taxpayer dollars. Maybe you should just listen on the phone then instead of doing all this threatening.
Yeah, but also to listen to food insecurity, like how is it for you guys to be so food insecure in a region that we've raped for so many years? Like, what is that like? Like, we literally come into your country and steal your resources. What is that like? Can you tell me?
Yeah. Oh, Ethiopia, you're hurting? Sorry.
I just, like you're on a date for the first time. Like, I'm really interested in you, Africa. Can you just died in your eyes?
I just hope they use the like baby voice, like, oh, like, oh no, tell me about your food insecurities. Like,
right.
Come on, this is like pandering. This like pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like this.
Go ahead.
It's so pandering. It just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to know about your food insecurity, and we want to find solutions for
But
you.
we're also going to tell you what you can't do to solve it.
Here's an idea for finding solutions. How about we stop stealing your resources? How about we stop placing undue debt burdens on your countries, right? So that you can never claw your way out of poverty because of the International Monetary Fund and the amount of debt that you take on at the behest of the Western colonial powers and imperial powers that rape your countryside on a regular basis. How about that? Yeah, but we'll invite you to Washington for a little Africa summit so we can tell you more about how we can bully you.
Oh, this tells Mr. Buckley why I think one
fantasy
can't
or
deal
what?
constructively with questions like the one you were asking about what about killing, setting up a program to kill half the people in Africa.
Yeah.
I think we should, you see, I set up an even wider thing, and I say this leads me to an absurdity. I think your question also leads to an absurdity.
I
It's
want
not
to know
worth
why.
pursuing.
I want to know why it's an absurdity. I don't think these graphs help. Do they?
Oh, you mean why your example is an absurdity?
Yes.
Well, we should,
Or
then
even
explore
these.
that more, you
Or
see.
even
I think
these.
you didn't describe how these people would be killed. This would, in my standards, be a
Painlessly.
very important factor.
Painlessly.
Painlessly.
Painlessly, yeah.
And so the total amount of happiness might be greater in that group of
Right.
people. But would it be greater for you, Mr. Buckley, if you knew your country were doing this?
No.
Well, you see, not everybody would be happier. The citizens in this country who might share emotions like mine and my concern postulate, which was the third of the three moral postulates, truth, concern, death, I think would be unhappy with this too. And how about the people who remained? Do you think they would be happy to have their brothers, their cousins killed off this way? I'm not at all sure that your proposal would lead to anything like a maximum of happiness.
Well, again, this would be a postulation. If one assumes that there are two people in a room both starving to death, and the disappearance of one ends the problem of starvation for the other, there is, I think, almost a biologically ineluctable.
Well, this gets close to the problem
conclusion.
solved by this, what was it, a basketball team in the Andes?
Yes.
In which they were reduced to cannibalism, and they did a lot of soul searching, and I have no quarrel with
Yeah, but they ate
what
corpses.
they had to
They ate corpses, yeah.
Well, the same thing could happen, you see, in the other area, and it might be that a group of people would gather together and they'd say, we have a contribution. It may be they've discovered some new, unique source of energy, and there are only 10 of them. And if they don't arrive back, they know that some part of civilization will be greatly damaged by this loss of energy.
So why is the West pushing social issues so hard on the African continent? You've probably seen stories like this where the aid that is being offered to Africa often comes with stipulations that they have to enact social reforms that are pretty unpopular. Well, there's a reason for this that I learned in politics, where I spent the better part of a decade being elected, and I want to share those with you. So one of the things that I learned in politics is that the general public has a limit for how much outrage that they have. So if they spend all of their time being angry on social issues, they don't have any time to be upset over economic issues. So if we have an aid package come in that comes with a whole bunch of stipulations that the people find really, really unpopular, they're not going to notice when the terms of that loan really work against their economy, or it's all siphoned out back to the West, leaving them with a whole bunch of debt. Again, it's a typical trick that we do in Western politics to our own people. Create social issues that people get really riled up and angry on, because as long as they're angry about social issues, they're not angry about the financial issues. What we want from Africa isn't social reform. We genuinely, I'll tell you, we don't care about those issues that we say we care about. What we really want is the resources and the money, and to kind of keep them down. So again, if you see us pushing a whole bunch of weird agendas on you and you're like, why the heck are they doing that so hard? Well, now you got the reason. You'll be fighting over these social issues, and you're not going to see that we're taking money out of the back of your pocket. Hopefully that's of value to you. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the next video.
They told you that Africa is underdeveloped, that Africa is not a place to go. Africa has nothing to offer. But I'm here to tell you, as you can see in all of the videos and stitches that I've shown you, that all of those narratives is a propaganda to keep Africa low. It is an agenda to make Africa look like not good place to go, in quote. That's what they do. But the wealth in Africa, the goodies in Africa, the earth, the natural resources, they are very much interested. And they always say, don't go there, don't go to that continent, don't go to that country. And they make Africa look like just one country. Meanwhile, you have 54 countries in Africa. They talk about Africa as though it's one place, but you have 54 countries that are very rich in natural resources. And they tell the world, don't go there. Meanwhile, they are here plundering the continent, plundering the countries of Africa, the oil of Nigeria, the gold in Ghana, the diamond in Botswana. I can go on and on and on and on. What about Congo, the cobalt, the uranium? I can go on and on. They fight themselves over Africa. That's what they did in 1914 amalgamation. They divided Africa among themselves to plunder them. And guess what? Today is still happening. That's the narrative they want you to believe, that they need help in Africa. But they underdevelop Africa. Until tomorrow, they're still doing it. They make Africa look like no good place. They can't develop themselves. From the video you just watched, they are like, if Africa can develop themselves, we're going to help them. Who are they to help them? Is Africa or countries in Africa, are they not a sovereign country that has taken their independence from their rulership? So why should they help a country? Yes, I understand that some African leaders are irresponsible. They are not doing what they should do. But it is none of the business of the Western countries to say they want to help them. To do what? When they say they want to help, do you know what they usually do? They plunder the country more. They are more worse than when they come to govern and take over the country. And that's all they know how to do. I can give an example. Libya is there, Somalia, Sudan. All of those countries are being plundered by Western world. And the saddest thing is that the narrative out there is that they are not a good place or good countries to go. That is what they always say. But they are in the country, taking their wealth, taking their resources, and they make the continent of Africa ungovernable, unlivable with their resources. They give them loans, and in return, they increase the interest. The interest is unbelievable. They pay, and their children's pay the loan, because IM and World Bank, they are just a strategy, a propaganda, a network that has been built to underdevelop Africa, to make Africa perpetually poor, to make them underutilized, to never realize their potential. That is all they do. That is what they do. And they come out with a propaganda, a narrative that is filled with lie, that Africa is a poor continent, that they cannot govern themselves. Meanwhile, you make them ungovernable. You get all of your stuff, all of your agenda upon this continent. You make the countries, you make their natural resources not to benefit them. And the rulers, you put puppets there that you can control them. At the long run, the continent, the countries in the continent never grow. And you come out again and say they need help. You give them eight crumbs out of the chunk of the things that you are stealing and plundering from them. And you come and say they need help, they need aid. And now you're even telling us, I will take my aid, as if your aid is what is sustaining the country. Meanwhile, you're stealing their resources and you make it look like your aid is what is sustaining them. Meanwhile, you are doing more evil, more harm to them than the aid you're giving. This is what is happening in Africa. And they tell the narrative as though they are helping. They are not helping, guys. Africa is rich. Africa is blessed. Africa is the Eden of garden, if you don't know that. Africa has resources, natural resources that they do not have. So they plunder Africa to develop their country. That's what they do. And I've brought to you today just for you to see what people are saying and how they strategize to underdevelop Africa. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying tuned. And if you love this great content, do me a favor, subscribe, like, and share. And of course, share this story, because let it go. Because their secret is now known. We know the truth. And the truth, they say it will set you free once you know it. Thank you for joining me. Stay tuned. Stay in love. Stay stay in peace, and avoid trouble. Bye for now.